Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good evening. Okay, my name is Muhammad Shakir Aiman bin Muhammad Nadri with metric number G2228347, and for today I will be one of the main presenter for today's presentation. So for today, we as a group from both the section of ENGL 7619 and ENGL 8211, entitled as 19th Century English Literature, which composed of me myself, Muhammad Syakir Aiman bin Muhammad Nadri, including my two other section mates, Siti Hajar Uthman Siru and Sister Carmen Chan Waimun. So we will be presenting on a title of The Incorporation of Dramatic Monologue in Robert Browning's poems. So in this presentation, each member will be presenting on different poems by Robert Browning in terms of the use of dramatic monologue in the said poems. Okay, so who's Robert Browning? So Robert Browning was born in the year of 1812 in England, and throughout his life, he is well known for being a poet, writer, and also as a playwright. And surprisingly, he is considered as one of the major poets in the Victorian era, and he was married to Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is, if I'm not mistaken, she is also a very, very well-known poet in the Victorian era. And surprisingly, actually, she's more can be considered more famous than her husband. And then Robert Browning is very, very well known as a poet who utilized dramatic monologue in his work, and he had mastered the said technique, and he had been considered as one of the master in the use of dramatic monologue. And in a lot of his work, he used his works, his poem, and so on, to reflect, satirize, and also to provide a commentary on the contemporary issues of his era, which is the Victorian era. And then the works that we will be presenting today will include My Last Duchess, Porphyria's Lover, and also Andrea del Sarto. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So, what is dramatic monologue? So, dramatic monologue can be defined as a type of poetry which is written in a form of a long speech. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be in long speech. The type of speech can be it can be short or long, but most of the time it is written in long speech, which was given or is given by a person within the poem, which gives us as the readers insights and somehow clues on the person's, the speaker's inner thoughts and also characteristics. So, according to M.H. Abrams, 2005, he provides three main features for dramatic monologue, which includes a person, not the poet, is a person who gives the speech, or in this case, the speaker. And the second one, we can see the presence of the listeners or auditors, but these listeners, we can only acknowledge his or her presence, which only are remarked by the speaker. And then the third one is we as the readers are exposed to the speaker's inner thoughts and characteristics through the speech that he or her is giving throughout the poem. So in addition, dramatic monologue is also used as a means to reflect, maybe to satirize, reflect, or criticize all the contemporary issues within the poet's era, which I will be explaining later on. Okay, so for my part, I will be analyzing and discussing on the use of dramatic monologue in one of Robert Browning's most well-known poems entitled as My Last Duchess. So before I delve deeper into the presentation, I think it's very appropriate for me to include or explain or to provide a little bit summary for the poem. So the poem, My Last Duchess, is written in iambic pentameter with consists of a number of rhyming couplets. So the story, the speech centers on the speaker, which is presumably Duke Alfonso from Italy, who gives a tour around his house or his residence to an emissary of his new bride's family. And then while touring the house with the emissary, he shows the emissary the painting of his late wife or the Duchess, and there he explains on his jealousy to his wife and all the actions that he had committed towards his wife, and therefore we as the readers are exposed to his controlling, abusive, and jealous traits toward the Duchess, which eventually leads to her demise. Okay, in the context of dramatic monologue, okay, so like I've mentioned before, the poem is best known for the incorporation of dramatic monologue within it. And here we can analyze the poem through the three criteria provided by Abrams, which includes the speaker, the presence of listeners or auditors, and also our exposure to the speaker's characteristic and personality. So for the first one, the speaker. Okay. So the speaker here within the poem is the Duke himself, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the Duke of Ferrara, Duke Alfonso, and here he is the husband of the late Duchess. And then the entire poem is written in a form of a very long speech given by the Duke to the listener, which is the emissary. And then this can be seen when he describes the painting, and also he's describing about his late wife, late wife attitudes that he doesn't like, and so on. So the story is told solely from the perspective of the Duke, and we can see his characteristics and also his inner thoughts through his speech. And then moving on to the second criteria, the presence of listeners or auditors. So there is a presence of a listener in the poem. And here, like I've mentioned earlier, the listener is an emissary from the new bride's family. And if I'm not mistaken, according to the poem, this emissary can be a servant from the family that was sent by the family, maybe to interview or to know more about the Duke before they get into the marriage. Okay, so the emissary, he listens to the Duke's speech, the whole poem, the description of the painting, and also the description of the Duke's late wife. So the listener's presence is only noted by the Duke himself as the speaker, which is mentioned throughout the speech. Like I've mentioned several lines in the poem, which includes "That's my last Duchess" painted on the wall, which shows that he's talking to someone. And then he stated, "Will please you sit and look at her." He's instructing something to someone. And then, "Oh sir," she smiled, "no doubt." So here we can see that the word "sir" here, it shows that he's talking to someone, and then that person should be a male. And then, "Will please you rise, we'll meet the company below," and then, "the count your master's known munificence." So here we can see that he's someone that is from the low position compared to the masters, and he's working with someone. And here we can see that we as a reader could only know on the listener's presence and their details through the speaker, like maybe his gender, his attire, his characteristic, and also maybe his occupation or job. And we only know about all these details through the speaker. And for the last one, the last characteristic or criteria is the speaker's characteristics and also inner thoughts. So, as the poem is written in a speech given directly by the speaker, which in this case the Duke himself, we as the readers are exposed to his true nature, characteristics, personal view, and inner thoughts as we delve deeper inside his mind. Like here I provided like three instances and how it shows his three natures and also attitudes. Like for the first one, it shows you can read the lines by yourself. It shows how his jealousy towards his wife, who always smile and being thankful to anyone or to everybody for every little things. And then for the second one, she said that herself be lessened, so nor plainly said her wits to yours forsooth and made excuse. And it shows how the Duke has a negative view towards women, where he believed that every woman during that era should be taught or should be taught lesson by the should be taught lesson or be educated by the husbands, which somehow shows the idea of women's subjugation towards men. And then the last one, much the same smile, this grew, I gave command, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. And here we are exposed to his over controlling natures toward the Duchess or the wife, which then presumably leads towards her death. Maybe he instructed the Duchess to kill herself. We didn't know. So through this speech, we are exposed to the Duke's very sexist and also problematic views, thoughts, and also actions. So for the last one, I will be explaining on how dramatic monologue has been used or utilized by poets as a form of reflection of the Victorian society. So here, the use of dramatic monologue within the poem My Last Duchess reflects the contemporary issue in Browning's time, which is the Victorian era. So this includes social issues, all the conventions, social rules that people have to follow during that time. And here, Browning used his technique in dramatic monologue and also in poetry writing to reflect and also to criticize these state issues. So, back in the Victorian era, women tend to be subjugated by men, as women they were considered as a weak creature, and hence they tend to be controlled and also forced into submission by men. And then these issues or all these practices where they are forced into submission by men, it opens the doors to a lot of discrimination, inequalities, and also a lot of mistreatment. And this includes the lack of rights, lack of freedom for the woman being dehumanized and also objectified, and they are prone to be victims to domestic violence, which we can see from the Duchess herself, where we can assume that he has been subjected to the violence of his husband, and also not to mention all the negative portrayals of women in a number of forms, like maybe in literary stuff and so on. So, in the end, it clearly shown through the thoughts and action of the Duke that he represents the Victorian sexist ideas towards women. So I think that is all for my part. Thank you so much. I will pass the floor to the next presenter.
Thank you, Shakir, for your interesting presentation on My Last Duchess. My name is Carmen Chen, and my presentation is titled Subjection Through Dramatic Monologue in Robert Browning's Andrea del Sarto. Before I start with the analysis, let me just bring you through a little bit of information about this poem, Andrea del Sarto. It was published in 1855 under the collection of Men and Women. This poem is written in blank verse and mainly uses iambic pentameter. It is quite a long poem which has got 267 lines. It is narrated by an Italian painter by the name of Andrea del Sarto, and he is speaking to his wife, Lucrezia. Let me give you a summary of the poem. Andrea del Sarto is a faultless painter because he is renowned for his technical perfection when he paints. He used to be the court painter of King Francis of France during the 16th century. In the poem, initially he was pleading to his wife that they should not quarrel and for her to just sit down for him for half an hour. He also admires Lucrezia's pristine beauty. He went on and compares his work with those of other great artists like Raphael and Michelangelo. He also laments that his work actually lacked the soul that the other great artists have in their work. He also regrets that he is actually undervalued. In the poem, he also blames Lucrezia for his lackluster career. He also reflects on his life back in France while working for the King Francis. But unfortunately, his time spent in France was short-lived, as Lucrezia wants to go back to Italy instead of staying in France. The poem ends when we see the arrival of the lover of Lucrezia, and we can also see that Andrea willingly lets her go. We will explore the theme of subjection in this poem. Women as subject to male aspirations and regulations. Of course, we can see that women are always the subject of men's ambitions, and through dramatic monologue, Browning attempts to silence women. It is not difficult to see the objective of subjecting or subjection here is either for men to accumulate more wealth and also for their own career success in this poem. On the national sphere, it means the enactment of double standard regulations that are used to impose control on women, particularly their bodies. And under such restraints, women start to rear its ugly head or rebel, even to the extent of overthrowing traditional role of a female. Let's look at how the poem actually attempted to silence Lucrezia, which is the wife of Andrea. Through dramatic monologue, Lucrezia's voice is suppressed. Now in line, we can see that in line, the first two lines where she was asked that she shouldn't be saying anything else. Let's just stop quarreling. And moving on in line 54 and 55, she is also accused of not understanding Andrea and not knowing what Andrea is doing. Further on in almost the middle of the poem, we can see that Andrea is in a way blaming her for not helping him in his work. And what you can see on the screen here is that if Andrea was saying that if you were to sit by me every night, I would be able to paint better. So from here, it is evidence that social control over women's movements, their voice and sexuality is present in Italy and Britain, particularly in the 1850s. This means that women are actually disempowered. If we were to look at it, the poem from the historical and legal perspective, under the Divorce and Matrimonial Causes Act passed in 1857, only men can sue for divorce on the basis of adultery, whereas women were accorded no right at all. Obviously, we can see that this is a form of control on women's body, and because of this, men's adultery was often taken for granted. It is also not difficult to see that this phenomenon has led to the problem of prostitution. All right, in Italy, around the same time, when the poem was published, there were laws that were enacted to curb prostitution. And around about 10 years later in England, we also see the passing of the Contagious Diseases Act to regulate common prostitutes, so that sexually transmitted diseases will not spread within the British Army and Navy. Well, this poem can also be looked at from a different angle. Let's look at it from the part of Lucrezia, where she asserted herself. Now, Browning is trying to what we call destabilize gender positions here. From the lines shown here, 11 to 14, Andrea is saying that his day has been hectic, and he asks Lucrezia to sit at the window with him, here by the window with your hand in mine. All right. So this is almost indicating that he's relying pretty much on her for emotional support. And then moving on to line 126. Had you with the same but brought a mind? When earlier on I was saying that he is blaming the wife for his not so bright career, but we can also see it from the point where now Lucrezia is able to influence his work by bringing her soul into his work instead of just her physical beauty. And if we were to look at the next line here in line 203, and you smile indeed, this hour has been an hour, another smile. Well, the half hour that Andrew requested his wife to just sit with him now seems like an hour. We can almost see that Andrea has been yearning for that, all right? He seems again to be relying emotionally on Lucrezia, which gives her so much of authority. And of course, this is so favorable to her. Love, does that please you? But does he, the cousin, what does he to please, what does he to please you more? In line 242 to 243, this relationship here, we can see that it's romantic, yeah, and the speaker Andrea is obviously aware of that. So this seems to be saying that Lucrezia is in such a powerful position, signaling her superiority and female rebellion. Moving on, through dramatic monologue, although Lucrezia isn't speaking at all, but we can almost see from the speech spoken here, we can almost see that we could hear her voice almost distinctly. All right, must you go? That cousin here again. He waits outside, must see you. You and not with me. Those loans, more gaming debts to pay. That's in line 218. It seems that Lucrezia is using Andrea as a medium for her thoughts. Yeah, but she only cares for her lover, all right, and she only cares for the money. She will use the money, Andrea's money, and loan it to her lover so that he could pay off his debt. And of course, it also shows that she has this desire to quickly leave Andrea. So at this point, we could see that Lucrezia is definitely asserting her authority. As a conclusion, from Browning's dramatic monologue, we can trace the powerlessness of women, as well as on the other hand, and we can also see their outright subversion, as well as their desire. So in a way, these characters, they are multi-dimensional characters who struggle with their psychological and moral issues. We can see that they are used to depict a range of human emotions as well as their motivation. From a historical viewpoint, we can deduce that Browning is able to explore larger social and cultural issues to actually help make his characters and stories more engaging and vivid. Uh, this would also mean that Browning's dramatic monologue poems represent their relevance to contemporary issues in marital and sexual relations. That is all for my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Haja binti Uthman Siru, metric number G2225026. And today I will be presenting on dramatic monologue in the poem Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning. Let us look into the summary of the poem first. So, the poem Porphyria's Lover was actually first published as Porphyria in 1836. It is a poem written by Robert Browning that was considered as one of his earliest and shortest dramatic monologue. So the poem is written in iambic tetrameter into a single long stanza with a rhyme scheme of A B A B B. So the opening scene of the poems reveals the speaker or the persona or the character, whatever you want to call him, who is not the poet, who is not Robert Browning. He was inside a cottage during a stormy, raining night when his lover, Porphyria, joins him. So the poem appears to depict a picture of the usual like amorous meeting between two lovers. However, as we progress further into the poem, the unexpected shocking scene when the speaker strangled Porphyria to death using her own hair make readers question the state of mind and also reliability of the speaker. I think it's important for me to explain a bit about the background of the poem to you to make it easier to understand what the poem is about. So Robert Browning actually republished A Furious Lover alongside another poem of his, Johannes Agricola in Meditation, in 1842 under the title Madhouse Cells, which I think is already quite telling based on the title what the natures of both of these poems are. So Robert Browning was actually very much interested about the human mind. Specifically, he was fascinated to explore further about the psychological abnormality that exists during his time. So he often present very complex, very disturbed and violent individual in many of his dramatic monologues. So the speaker in Porphyria's Lover is actually mysterious. We don't know his identity, we don't know his name, we don't know who he is. We only know him as Porphyria's Lover. So unlike Browning's other poem in this video, like My Last Duchess or Andrea del Sarto, where we know the speaker who already has a name or who has affiliates himself with someone or something. We know him in relation to other people, but in Porphyria's Lover, it is different. We don't know who the speaker is, but the poem did elaborate on the psychological state of his mind that struggles, that distort and also justify the reality which led him to kill his lover Porphyria. So as we already know, as I said before, Porphyria's Lover takes on the form of dramatic monologue, which is the form that Robert Browning was a master of. So the three elements of dramatic monologue that was found in Porphyria's Lover, first of all, it was written in the voice of the speaker or the persona or a character who is not the poet, so it's not Robert Browning. Second of all, the silent listener in the poem is actually the reader and that Porphyria. Robert Browning, through the persona, addresses the silent listener, in this case the reader, which is us. And then at the second half of the poem, after he strangles Furia, he may also addresses the dead Furia at the same time. And last, the third and last element of dramatic monologue is exposes the speaker's character, intent, and psychological state, which we will further look into when I provide the analysis of the poem. So we have come to the longer part of the video, which is the analysis of the poem, where I will provide like critical analysis to understand what the poem is about and the essentially what the speaker narration is actually about. So first of all, the poem introduced us to the scene of the bad weather, where this personification of the weather in line 2 until 4, sullen, spiteful, vexed, actually reflects the mood of the speaker. So it means that the speaker in a state of unhappy, sullen, he's very much, in a very negative mood. So suddenly his lover Porphyria glides in. So we already see like some dramatic shift there, or some contrast where suddenly Porphyria glides in. This implies like a graceful movement, some sort of like contrast to the bad weather. And when Porphyria glides in, she made the cottage warm, and this like insinuates that her presence in the cottage bring warmth and joy to the cool and deserted cottage. So Porphyria then removed her wet clothes. She removed her soiled glove. She untied her hat, and she also let her damp hair fall down. Uh, as if to seduce him, she moved closer and made him lie on her bare shoulder while murmuring her love for him. So throughout this scene, the speaker remains passive towards her. So it means that Porphyria is the one who is active and the speaker remains passive. So the line "and call me when no voice replied" in line 15 implies that he is already dissociated from reality, as if when he's speaking about that line, when no voice replied, it implies that it is actually not him, like it is somebody else. So we can already see the disoriented state of mind that the speaker is actually in. And then the speaker thought and character is clear. What he thought of Porphyria and her love for him in line 22 and until 25, because we can see that he actually condemns her, and he thought of her as a weak, as prideful and vain woman that unable to make herself like commit to him fully forever as he wants them to be. However, the speaker do believe of Porphyria's passion towards him. The evidence being she left a gay, uh, a happy, uh, joyous party, and braving the cold, hard weather just to be with him in the cottage. So when he looks up at her eyes, he sees what he was looking for. That confirm that she does indeed worship him. Hence, with this revelation, he is happy, he's proud, and at the same time, he's also surprised by this. At that moment, he debated what to do with her, where she was in a state that was all, in the poem, it says, all mine, like he repeatedly says that, and in a state of perfectly good and pure. So it actually reveals like the true nature of his possessiveness and his uh, nature of wanting to exert control over Porphyria. So in the next moment, he shockingly decides to strangle her using her own hair, where it is now she was the one who remains passive and show no resistance towards him. So the line "no pain felt she," I am quite sure she felt no pain. Is actually the speaker trying to convince himself and the reader that what he did was not wrong, because Porphyria herself did not react or feel any sort of pain. So at this point, we can already say that he is an unreliable speaker, because we already didn't trust uh, whatever that he says, because he may be saying things that are true, but the way that he explained it may not be true. So it already make us kind of like skeptical of his intent, of his nature, of his character. The eerie tone of calmness that he portrays when he toys with her corpse. He says that he peered at her eyelids and he kissed her cheek, while he, basically he painted a picture of the lifeless Porphyria as like a young and innocent in his arm. That he kind of like infantilized her, with the description of her little head and things like that, shows like his mental state as a deranged lover. So the speaker also positioned like Porphyria's corpse as he liked, and the line uh, in line 50 until 51, where he said, "Only this time my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon its tail," tell readers that it was now him who propped up her head on his shoulder, just like she did to him before he killed her, which kind of shows the role reversal here. Whereas when Porphyria was alive just moments earlier, she did that to him, and now this line like kind of symbolizes that he takes back the power that she had over him, and thus he establishes control over the lifeless Porphyria. So the last three lines that actually reinforce our picture of this speaker as essentially a mad person, or a mad lover, where it is implied that he had actually no qualms about killing her, because he justifies that the silence of God mean that even God himself agrees to him killing her, because he and the corpse spend the whole night without anything happen to them. So it shows to his mind that there's no retribution from God that happened towards him. So it implies that he thinks that the act of murdering Porphyria is not wrong, is not sinful, because he doesn't get any sort of consequences that happen towards him. So, as the last point, I will touch a bit about the historical context, which is the Victorian era, when this poem was written. So, the poem "For Furious Lover" by Robert Browning does actually reflects the gender norms during the Victorian era, where women are expected to be angels in the house, which basically means that they are expected to become a good wife and good mother. So Robert Browning through Porphyria showcase this woman Porphyria, who shatters the social constraint put on women by appearing to be in an illicit or like a scandalous relationship with the speaker. So we can say that this poem clearly centers on male violence and dominance, and also objectification towards women that was prevalent during the Victorian era, through the grotesque, perverse action of the mad speaker toward his lover Porphyria, uh, which led him to kill her. And through the nature of his character, his intent, his the way that he describes things, we know that he's suffering from psychosis, and he's like a deranged lover that has no qualms in committing murder because he wants to preserve, like the perfect moment where Porphyria is all his, and it was in a state that was pure and good, and in the state that she was all his. So I think that sums up my presentation for Furious Lover. Thank you for listening.
Let me just do a quick wrap up of our three presentations. So Shakir has demonstrated how female subjugation and other related issues in the Victorian society were portrayed in My Last Duchess, whereas Hajar's analysis of Porphyria's lover shows male violence and dominance, and in Andrea Del Sarto, issues of control of female bodies and voice, female subversion, and related regulations were depicted. So we hope that this help provide more insight on the use of dramatic monologue in Robert Browning's poems.
That's all from our group. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Bye for
Bye.
now.